These days, I would say that my main focus is on the intensive management of critically endangered animal populations. I'm particularly interested in that interface between captive and wild, and how techniques developed in zoos can be applied to the conservation of wild species and populations. My name is Joe Wood. I'm a conservation biologist employed by Toledo Zoo, and I manage the zoo's involvement in a global portfolio of conservation projects. We were asked to participate in a conservation planning workshop in the West Visayas region of the Philippines in 2019. That workshop was focused on a whole raft of West Visayan endemic species, but our particular interest was a species called the Negros bleeding heart dove, which is a critically endangered dove species, which has been pushed right to the brink of extinction by habitat fragmentation and hunting. However, there is a captive population which has been in existence since the early 1990s, which is breeding very readily and is held by a number of organisations in the West Visayas. The purpose of the workshop was to discuss next steps in terms of what could be done for this species, and particularly how feasible it was to look at reintroducing this species back into the wild on Negros. Following on from that workshop, we were able to establish a very close relationship with an organisation called the Talarak Foundation, who hold a significant population of Negros bleeding heart doves and were very committed towards seeing them released back into the wild. Over the last few years, Talarak Foundation has established a new nature reserve, a place called the Bayawan Nature Reserve. They've already carried out successful reintroduction projects with Visayan spotted deer, Visayan warty pigs, and with Visayan trichtic hornbills. The next phase of that project will involve an attempt to release Negros bleeding hearts. This planned release of Negros bleeding hearts is very exciting for a number of reasons. One of the main reasons is the level of collaboration, which began with that initial workshop in the Philippines and which has been continued since. The pooling of resources and expertise from all these various different organisations and local stakeholders. The other reason it's exciting is because it's very new. There's been no previous attempts to release this species into the wild, or indeed any of the other related species. So the protocols which we are developing now, we are having to formulate from scratch. And the only reason this is at all feasible is because of the expertise and the support of the various organisations who have contributed to this, but also because of the knowledge which has been built up from our study of this and other related species in captivity. So prior to the release, we were all very apprehensive. We were by no means certain that these birds would be able to survive in the wild. Those animals had been in captivity for multiple generations, away from the selective pressures of the wild, not being given opportunity to forage naturally, not having to evade predators, and living a fairly easy life in captivity. We did everything we could to ensure that the birds were given the best possible chance of adapting to wild conditions and of surviving in the wild. And a key part of that strategy involved the use of a soft release enclosure. And so on the 21st of June, we removed a panel of mesh from the soft release aviary and gave the birds the opportunity to make their way into the wider forest. And the birds were fitted with radio telemetry transmitters, which were giving out a continuous signal, and that signal could be picked up by receivers that were being operated by a team of local trackers. The data that we've been able to gather from this trial release shows that these birds are in fact eminently capable of surviving in the wild, of navigating all the threats that entails, of finding adequate food, and of behaving as wild birds. What we are trying to do is to give the birds the ability to establish individual territories in different areas of the reserve and to behave as a free-living and truly wild population. Why this is so very, very exciting is that we've shown that this actually is entirely possible. This is action. This is moving away from the hopes and the dreams and showing that we can do this. Conservation in the wild can be effective, and we can get to that point where we can start releasing these critically endangered animals back into the wild and having them living free once again.